WaNotify.org. A message from the state of Washington.
Now, the greatest story never told with Miles and Thrill.
Oh, here we are again, everybody. Welcome to episode 40 of the Greatest Story Never Told podcast. Available on radio.com, but you already knew that because that's how you got here. We're not sure of the opening commercial. Apparently, they are putting one on there. I'm not sure if it's still Astroglide or
I hope it is.
what the deal is, but maybe it's like Deja Vu or Lovers here locally. Wouldn't that be great if we could have like, maybe it's the A-Crop down in Portland. We don't know who's sponsoring this thing, but what we do know is this. If you would just be so kind to make a small donation specifically to the Fisher House here in the Pacific Northwest, go to the Pacific Northwest portion of the Fisher House give. That way we get it back here locally, but either way, you will become the unofficial sponsor of the Greatest Story Never Told. This comes our way from Buddy Scott Richter, and he says, basically, Thrill, here's the $20 you said I owed you. That went to the Fisher House.
I don't remember saying that, but I'm glad you paid
Scott's
up.
my appliance guy. He's a good guy. Yeah. Retired now, living the high life. He's making beer. Gentlemen, Miles, I use that term loosely with you. Thanks a lot there, Thomas. We are messaging you this evening to become your newest unofficial sponsors of the Greatest Story Never Told podcast with a donation of, you're not going to believe this, not 20, not 40, not 50, not 100, not 150, $300.
Wow.
Get out of here, right?
Damn.
To the Fisher House. We are the Bar Tools podcast. We are a relatively new podcast that is currently 29 episodes deep. Trust us, that's a pretty good run. We've been doing this
That's
for 40.
all right. That was 11 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to catch up unless
We are
one of
veterans,
us gets
friends.
hit by a truck or something, because we're not giving up that number. You'll always be 11 back unless you start doing like 2 a night.
Yeah, I promise you, we will not get more productive.
No. We are 6 tradesmen who talk about our day-to-day lives and our trades, all while having a few cold ones. All of us have been huge fans of the show, The Men's Room podcast, and all the good stuff you do for the people of the community, the listeners. Thank you so much for what you do, and please stay beautiful. That is from Thomas, Trevor, Max, Cody, Gary, and Frazier. They are the Bar Tools podcast. P.S. Also, we would love to hear your feedback on the podcast, seeing how you are all more experienced than us. I don't know about that, Thomas.
Well, we're 11 episodes more experienced.
Yeah.
I think we covered that.
Tell you why we're better after doing all that.
When you get to episode 40, you will sound this good.
Okay, we're going to talk about the way that things sometimes end up happening here. Sometimes they are very spontaneous. Sometimes we get these ideas at the last second. Just know, like any other business, most things involve a lot of planning, a lot of organization. And what I'm saying by that is, if we were to do something big, like we're talking about this beer and all these things, we would definitely want to get that on social media, let people know. We have people voting right now on KISW.com for the new beer. By the time you hear this, we will have the results, and we will know then, and we'll have already released that probably Friday before, right? So either way, we have this organization that we attempt to pull off. Now, oftentimes,
sometimes.
Steve and I don't work real well in that environment.
And he's not kidding. We get admonished for this. Every year you do an employee review, like a lot of places, and the one thing that I always hear is lack of organization and attention to detail and everything kind of related to that. And I'm like, look, man, that's just how I am.
Hey, okay, Red Festival will come around. We'll get everything nailed down. We'll be able to make the announcement. We have bands that we're going to bring out. We have a pretty good idea of the entertainment. And then that's it. They basically look at Steve and I and say, hey, man, this is it. We're not doing anything else. Stop with your crazy ideas. Because
Don't add anything. Follow this timeline, guys. Sure. And that's all. And look,
we'll bust in the door and go, how about juggling monkeys, man? We got a guy with juggling monkeys.
What did I tell you? No.
No more ideas.
No
more ideas.
Follow this, guys. Stop it.
So we have this sometimes plan where we might forget to tell people what we're going to do, so we just do it, right? It's a little trick we have. It's not really a trick.
I don't know if you call that a trick. Our boss calls it things like insubordination or
right.
You did not follow my request.
This one goes into the file.
But we understand. Sometimes, look, we're like children. Sometimes there's just something you really want to do because you think that it's a good idea, funny. And the bosses, much like parents, say, hey, this is a bad idea. And not only is it a bad idea, but I'm expressly telling you. No.
Sure.
And then at that point, we're like, ooh, when we do this, we can't let them know.
Right. We did this one idea called Stand and Be Counted. All right. And the idea was that each member of the radio show was going to take either, at the time, there was 3 erectile dysfunction drugs on the market. It was Viagra, Cialis,
What was
and one more that I cannot
What
remember.
was it?
I was going to say Valtrex, but that's a
No,
herpes
that's
drug.
for a different purpose.
Cialis.
Jesus Christ.
It was
What was it?
Viagra. It was one more. Either way, it's not the popular one, but it basically did the same thing. And then there was going to be a placebo. So the way we worked this is each one of us took one of these pills before we went on the air. I want to say Ben got the placebo. I got the 3-day. I got the weekender. All right.
You got Cialis.
I got
right?
Cialis.
Yes.
You got Viagra.
That's right.
And I want to say Ted got Levitra. Levitra, maybe?
Is that for cholesterol?
I think it's Levitra, and I'm not kidding you. But
Levitra?
I'm pretty sure that's it, because it was one for people who had heart issues and couldn't take Viagra. It is Levitra.
Yes, it
Okay.
looks like Levitra is an erectile dysfunction.
I thought that was for cholesterol.
So-
no wonder my cholesterol hasn't changed when I have an erection.
So we just went into the weekend not knowing what we took. It was blind. Just pop it in,
Yeah.
throw it back, man. See what happens. Just, like if you're going to the grocery store, hopefully you don't see a hot woman or anything like that. We kind of played it like that. And I want to say that both Steve and myself did not get laid that weekend.
No, but I had an erection. I was ready to go.
But that was just the way it worked out, right? And I didn't know I had one for 3 days, or could have had one for 3 days. But because if you just took the Viagra, 12 hours later or whatever, wouldn't necessarily do anything. You know what I mean?
No, I know this.
Okay, so we had a doctor
But the
come
clock
in.
was ticking.
We had a clinical doctor come in. We had a guy explain the differences between the drugs. Dr. Schuster came in and he was like, okay, this one does this one does this one does this. Pretty sure with these dosages, fine. Did this test, we came back. Obviously, I think the only person who did get laid was the person who did not take any of the drugs.
Yeah, the one who got a placebo.
Right, exactly.
Got laid.
So, but on this one, and I'm not sure exactly.
But then again, the point of that is we went through the process.
We went
That's why
through
we
the
had a doctor
process.
come in and explain the possible
Correct.
side effect. Don't
Yeah.
do this at home. Blah blah
Right.
blah.
It's
All
clinical.
that stuff.
It's clinical.
Yeah.
It gives it a little bit of a, like, all right, this is legitimate. Well, this idea was not. There was no doctor.
No, this next idea was nothing like
Right.
that.
And I can't remember how we got on this. It was either the fact that there was the story many years ago about the woman who found out that her either ex-boyfriend or current boyfriend or whatever the deal was, who was also working for her or with her at NASA. I want to say he was at Cape Kennedy or Canaveral, whatever you want to call it, Florida. She was probably in Houston or someplace
Yes,
like that.
Houston.
Either way, she gets wind of the fact that maybe her ex is dating somebody else.
It was a weird love triangle, but they were
Right.
all astronauts.
They were all astronauts, and she decides she's going to jump in her car, and she's so pissed off, she gets her stuff, throws it in the trunk, whatever she's going to do, like duct tape, drop cloths, who knows. Either way, I think we know, but either way, she wore a Depends undergarment. That way she would never have to pull over on her drive all the way from Houston to Florida.
Because her goal was to kidnap her ex's current girlfriend.
Right.
So yeah, she threw on the Depends and made like record time because again, she didn't have to stop, and we thought that's kind of genius.
Mhm.
We do the show sometimes, and it's just like, oh man, we got to get to a commercial break because one of the valves is starting to leak. You know what I mean? And we thought, well, I bet you we could do that, right?
Sure. I mean, basically the idea was, and I can't remember, I think we were having like a discussion of like, when did you almost make it or when did you not make it? And, just talking about the idea of being so scared, maybe you essed your pants or whatever the deal was. But
Have you ever
know,
actually been that scared?
and just how uncomfortable like the natural feeling is. Like I always talk about when I was in Mexico at that place that you weren't allowed to put toilet paper down the toilet, so you had to drop it in the waste paper basket, and what a difficult thing that was to do mentally, to break that cycle, to be able to drop it into a waste paper
Right.
basket. That was the hardest thing for me.
Because in the States, we call
Yeah.
that a prank.
And as you become an adult, you realize like, very rarely do you pee your pants. You might have passed out one night and done it, but you
Sure.
weren't conscious of that.
Right.
And typically when you sleep, you go 8 or 9 hours without using the bathroom, and you're perfectly fine.
You can wake up in the middle of the night having to pee, and you make a judgment call like, I'm going back to sleep.
And we go to the bathroom quite a bit, at least once every 2 hours in here, whatever the deal is, depending on how much we drink. And but at this point in time, we decided we were going to do like a Depends challenge.
Yeah.
We were going to buy adult undergarments, and there's no real science behind this, you see.
Well, there's the mental side. Someone had called the show and said, God, because we're kicking around the idea. And somebody had called and they said, listen, me and I want to say he was in college, like his frat brothers, whatever. They tried to do it. They said, look, we put on undergarments and wanted to see if you could pee or poop yourself. And we said, well, how did it go? He said, none of us. You can't. He said, as an adult, I'm telling you, you cannot will yourself to do something that you spent your every day of your life training yourself not to do. And I said, BS. But yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
The problem was this. Our boss kind of gets wind of this and says,
Well, because we now sit on the air that day.
right. But we didn't do it that day. We're kicking around the idea.
Yeah.
Like, hey, So the boss kind of pulls us in and just says, look, I mean, like, the concept is funny, but you can't do that. You cannot do that on the air. That's ridiculous. And listen, we tried to negotiate for it. And he's like, I hear what you're saying, but listen to me. No. The answer is no. I don't feel like listening to you guys try to defecate or pee yourself during your show. No, absolutely no. And I would say what, maybe 3-4 weeks pass, and we get word that the boss is not going to be in the office on a certain day. Right? It's just like a random Tuesday. Whatever day of the week we did it, it's a day that he was not here. So we agreed in advance, all right, let's get these because we might get in trouble, but we'll get in trouble later because he's not here.
Turns out he came in that afternoon, after all.
So we're sitting here, now we're on the air, and we're openly discussing, hey man,
We got the
trying to
Depends
poop
on.
ourselves.
We've already bought them. They're very comfortable.
They are not very comfortable. They're more comfortable than
you
they
would think they
look,
are.
but they are not very
The
comfortable.
thing of it like a pull-up swimming for a kid. It's like not too much padding. It's not a diaper. but
Were
it's-
you ever not aware that you were wearing?
No. Oh God, you
Yeah,
know
I
right
mean,
away.
you're just sitting here the whole
But
show.
either way, we couldn't do it.
We tried. We're trying
Yeah.
to poop ourselves.
The guy was right.
Yeah, trying to pee
But
ourselves.
either way, a haircut go flying into the studio.
We did not know that he was going to come by the office later. We thought like he was gone for the day. Turns out our intel was not 100% correct. So about the middle of the show, we see him. So we have a glass studio. We see him walking down the hall, and now he does this thing, and
He's got this hard walk. You know what I mean? Like with his this very very like I'm pissed walk.
But then he stands outside the glass till we go to commercial break. So in my mind, I'm like, well, man, oh man, we should be like F commercials.
Don't
Like,
worry,
let's
we haven't
just-
peed yet.
Like, let's just not do it.
Right.
But we go to commercial break, and now the boss is in the studio. And we have that uncomfortable conversation. You know, like, and he was very calm about it. He said, I turned on my radio in my car, and I hear my favorite guys on my favorite afternoon show doing this thing that I expressly told them not to do. So I'm like, what show was that? He's like, are you wearing a diaper right now? I am. He's like, have you? And he wanted to know, which was the whole point of doing it.
We can't.
Like, have you pooped to feed yourself? I said, man, honest to God. And you realize you're having this conversation now, and you are wearing a diaper, and you're explaining to your boss, I have not pooped in my pants today,
But
boss.
I'm trying.
Nor, but I am giving it a try.
Yeah, it's just impossible to do.
And
Like
he
I
said-
tried to pee myself like 4 or 5 different times, and psychologically, I just couldn't get past the fact that I'm peeing myself as I'm sitting in this chair. And I did have a change of clothes. We came in like I had
Yeah.
gym clothes, whatever. We were going to be fine. I mean, as far as if it leaked.
Well, the
We
boss,
didn't know.
the boss said, well, why did you choose to do this today?
Science.
If I told you not to do it. I said, well, you know, with all the cards on the table, man, because you weren't here. I mean, like, I'm not going to lie to you about this,
Right.
you know. So he gets kind of pissed and he says, listen, we have a general protocol that we ask you guys to follow. And he's still keeping it together at this point. It's like, that we ask you guys to follow. It's like I'm talking to a grown man in a diaper who I told to try not to S himself. And he's like, I don't know if you're trying to S yourself as we speak. I'm like, a little
I am.
bit, a little bit.
Because it's
A
easier
little
when you're
bit.
standing up.
Yeah, and I'm kind of nervous, right? So it's going to happen. This will be the time. So finally, he kind of ends with, he goes through his usual spiel, and he kind of ends it with something to the effect of, hey, man, next time, you know, when you do something like that, it has to go through the email chain, blah, 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 blah. And he was done, and I said, I'm sorry, man, I didn't know. And that's when he lost his ass and just said, come on, man, how long have we been working together?
I believe his exact quote was, how many times have we had this conversation?
About
How many times
peeing
have
and
we
pooping
been-
in our pants?
How many times have we been
I
here?
don't remember ever having that conversation.
That was uncomfortable. But in
Yeah.
the end, based on our scientific research, it is damn near
It
impossible.
really is.
Yeah.
And we did it for science.
And you're not trying.
There's episode 4.
You've been listening to the greatest story never told with Miles and Thrill on radio.com.
Oh, man! A Double Flush production.
A message from Target Zero. This evening, most people in Washington didn't drive after drinking. They did happy hour virtually. They chose a designated driver. They made sure their friends stayed safe too. And thanks to those good decisions, our roads stayed safe. 78% of us in Washington never drink before we drive. And that's a choice that's easy to live with.
Hey there! The holidays are here, so it's good to know QFC can save you some time with free pickup on orders of $35 or more. Whether your traditions call for a hearty helping of juicy ham, ample apple pie, or Aunt Sue's legendary twice stuffed stuffing, QFC has got you covered. So order for free pickup at QFC.com or the app and get more time to get your holiday on when you grab your groceries curbside. QFC, love fresh, love local, love free pickup. Restrictions may apply.
Now, the greatest story never told with Miles and Thrill.
Oh, look! It's episode 41. Wow. Who'd have thought we made it this long? I thought we only did a 30 episode contract on this, didn't we? Was it 35 episodes? Man, you're getting
I thought it was 13, like
you're
13 a season, right? Like
Yeah.
TV.
You're getting your value out of this deal, man. What a deal the Greatest Story Never Told podcast is. And as we say all the time, when the podcast begins, I'm sure you hear some type of commercial in the 30-second variety. That is wonderful news that our podcast is actually being sponsored to some degree. But then again, we also offer what we call the, quote, unofficial sponsorship of the Greatest Story Never Told podcast. And we start with this email, and it says, Ola Bajolas, I just want to say thanks to you guys for all you do. The men's room is truly a gift the world needs in these economical times. Hope you're doing great as well. I'd like to be an unofficial sponsor for the Greatest Story Never Told, episode 41. The podcast is great. Congrats on continuing that as well. For the Big 4-1, I've donated $41 to the Fisher House. Attached is my receipt. Much love and appreciation from you guys. That from Manuel, Yasmin, and Julie Vera, a.k.a. our little butthead.
Our little butthead.
Yeah,
Very
we got a
nice.
nice family donation. So that's very cool. And we do ask, if you do want to donate to the Fisher House locally, do us a favor and make sure that it's local, because you can go to fisherhouse.org. That is in Washington, D.C. That is the national chapter. They are the head of all things, and you're not doing anything wrong by donating, of course, to the national branch. But if you could, we prefer that there...
You could do less wrong by donating locally.
Right, to the Pacific Northwest chapter. There's 3 Fisher Houses, as you know. When we began this whole thing, there were 2 in the area, and then we decided to do a really dumb idea, get drunk one night at Elysian Fields. We go down there, we start drinking beer with Joe at Elysian. Basically,
Actually, that's not true. We were drinking tequila.
well, we
Yes.
started with beer. It's a
Tequila made the night end
Yeah.
differently than beer.
it's a brewery, so we started with
Sure.
beer, then we ended up in tequila, and then we got the bright idea, hey, let's do a beer. We were pretty trashed at that point in time. Couldn't even remember the next day a lot of that conversation, to be honest.
We didn't know we had the conversation at all. We got a text from Joe, and it just said, "Were you guys serious last night?" Which all of us are like, "Oh no! Like, what do we do, man? We effed up somewhere." So we were like, "Maybe. What about?" It's like me making you a beer. We're like, "Oh hell yeah, let's do it, man."
Yeah. So he brought us back down a week later. We had all these beers we were going to try, all these different styles of beer and all this stuff. And at this point in time, you have to remember, Elysian was 3 brew houses. They had one in Capitol Hill, which was their very first location. They had Elysian Fields down by the stadium, and they had one in
Tangletown.
technically Green Lake, Tangletown area up on top of the hill. So they never had beer in cans, in bottles. If you wanted Elysian, you had to go and get it on draft at one of these locations, and they were in other bars and things like that. But they really hadn't branched out of the general greater Seattle area, but had been one of the more established and better brewers in the town without question. So we come up with this idea, and then you guys start buying the beer like crazy. And when I say crazy, it got to the point where they had to call in a favor, and they basically called the guys down in Fort Collins, Colorado, and said, here's the recipe. For the time being, can you do us a favor? We'll send all the hops and all the ingredients. You brew the beer, you bottle the beer in 22s. We will ship that beer back on 18-wheelers. So for the first year and a half to 2 years, that beer that you wanted so bad was coming from Colorado.
Because they couldn't keep up with the demand here. They didn't have the
Yeah.
capacity to do
They
it.
could make the draft here, no
Right.
problem. You know what I mean? But as far as getting into stores, and this was the first idea, now let's get the spirit stores. Long story short, then we make it to gold, we make it to black, we have all these things. Now we're at their 10-year anniversary. This is 10 years ago. And, you know, through Red Festival, through all the things, through Uli's, Men's Room Sausage, we are almost, if not at the $1 million mark.
Oh yeah.
On
Yeah,
money
yeah.
given to the Fisher House, which is an unbelievable thing. And yes, we are still going to try to do some type of anniversary beer, so you know.
There is no try. You learn
Right.
nothing from Yoda.
Yeah, we are.
There is no try. There is do or there is do not. Don't quote me on that. But
Something
that
like that.
paraphrase.
Do not.
Mike says I nailed it.
All right, good.
Do
So,
or do not. There is no try, followed by sad ears.
Yeah,
Remember,
and,
that's real important for Yoda to express his disappointment, is have his ears flop like a scared Bugs Bunny.
yeah, that is why you fail. Right.
You sound more like Al Pacino.
Yeah, no.
That is why you fail, amigo.
That is not the Yoda I remember.
Hey, S.A.
Try to sneak it in real quick.
Yeah. I can't wait for more of Baby Yoda, though, on Mandalorian. When that comes out in the fall. Kind of looking forward to that. But either way,
I hate that I find that thing cute.
I know. It's good stuff. So either way, we've determined folks, that you guys want a Pilsner. A Pilsner is a wonderful choice. Summer's here. We would
It's an
also
out of
like to
sour,
know
so it's a wonderful choice.
what kind of style you like as far as the brand of Pilsner light beer you drink. If you like KISW on Facebook, we've got a couple little questionnaires up there, kind of polls like, hey man, what beer do you currently drink in that style? So we encourage you to go there so we can get a little better idea what taste you like a Czech style Pilsner, an American style Pilsner, whatever the deal is. So there you go. We'll help out the Fisher House, and thank you for the donation there, Manuel and the family. All right, another email here. What up, guys?
What up?
I moved out here about 10 years ago. Been listening for 4 or 5 years. You guys are the S. I don't think I've ever laughed so hard in my car most times to the point of tears. My favorite thing is hearing Robin laughing in the back. That always cracks me up. Yeah,
It's the best we can do. Yeah.
Anyway, I just finished The Greatest Story Never Told in about 2 weeks, and it's effing hilarious. I was thinking about my favorite episode, though, of your regular show, and it is the one where the dude calls in and starts arguing with Thrill about the N-word, and then Thrill finally asks, do you know I'm black? And that guy's response had me dying. I was laughing so hard, I wish I could have seen that guy's face. Was there anything ever else to it? Maybe you guys could just do a little quick recap of that, just an idea. Anyway, keep it real, fellas. Best show ever. Thanks for the laughs. That from our good buddy Aaron Olson. A.O. Thank you, Aaron. That's pretty nice. Well,
No, there was no real follow-up with it. You know, once the dude found out I was black, it was all water under the bridge from his perspective. But keep in mind, throughout my entire career in radio, it's been 21 years in October 15th, if anyone cares. Anyway, it'll be 21 years, and for I guess for 19 of those years, I've actually been on the air, right? First 2 years, you're doing all the crap you hate doing, working holidays, but for the last 19 years, I've been on the air. And the one overwhelming observation that people make, based on my voice, everyone says, man, I thought you were a fat black dude, or a fat white guy, specifically, fat white guy from the South. And I have heard that when we were in Baltimore, I heard it when we were in Seattle. When we were syndicated, I'd get emails from people, hey man, I know you're from the South. I'm like, I'm not. And not only am I not a fat white dude from the South, I'm actually a skinny brother from the North. You were close, you got the right country, but otherwise, it's worked to our benefit when we had the interview with the guy from the Klan.
sure.
Right? He didn't know. I didn't change my voice. I just talked to this guy.
And on the same point, when we were in Baltimore, Ted, everyone thought Ted was black. Just because of his taste in music. Ted grew up in PG County. As far as culturally, what Ted likes, especially when we were living on the East Coast, you know, I mean, that's the great thing about radio. You have no idea who the hell's by them. Well, now you do with the internet and everything else. But back in the day, you had a little bit of, I don't know, you kind of can hide. I can't really do it.
But I will also say this: when I was so excited when I started in radio, right? And so you knew the names of most of the jocks, even if you didn't listen to the station, you just knew the names, right? So there's the light stations, the warm stations. Trust me, they're everywhere. Radio's not going to get creative on you. So wherever you go, there's a warm station. There's the light station. They all have the same name, but you knew the names of these jocks. So I get a job, and the station I get hired at is an AM sports station. And sports guys look precisely the same no matter where you go in the country. They all look the same. They are now overweight because they used to be muscular when they played high school sports, possibly collegiate sports. But either way, now they're as much of an expert on sports as I am. And that's the reason I wanted to get out of it. It drove me crazy. But I remember you'd walk down the hall, and I'm all excited. I'm like, man, I'm going to meet these luminaries of voice, these people that have engaged us for years and years and years and years and years. Some of these people you meet and you're like, wow, that is a good looking person. That happens maybe twice. Overwhelmingly, at least that, because keep in mind, this is pre-internet. People can say whatever they want to say, but the truth is, when people can see you, fewer ugly people make it to certain things, all right? So I remember walking in, and I will not say the names of any of these people. Some of these people have voices. There are a few women, I mean, they just talk, you got direction, right? And there were two women where I'm like, wow, they are, I mean, just gorgeous and real sweet people, both of them. The rest, I'm like, dear God, like you have been drinking water straight out of the Amazon without filter.
And also,
I don't get what's that. The same thing with the dudes, and there's one particular guy, he's very nice. I would never want to insult this person. He was exceptionally kind to us. I could not believe how big and ugly this guy was. I mean, and the years that I worked with him, and like I said, he's real nice. But we'd bump into each other in the hall, and even when we talked, and he gave me good advice on radio, things to do, but every time I talked to him, all I could think is, this son of a bitch is so ugly.
Right.
But when you heard him on the air, he sounded, and so he's very good at his job, specifically because his job was to not be seen.
And a lot of these people have really big egos. I mean, huge egos. And
The worst people always had the biggest
yeah,
ego.
and some of the ugliest. And you're like, and I don't know why I equate ego to being attractive, but I would assume that you would feel a little bit more better about yourself if you were an attractive looking person, you know. So when you get ego from some of these people in radio, you're like, look in the mirror. Like, you gotta knock yourself down.
Man,
I mean, that's serious, man. Like women, men, I mean, you name it. I mean, there was a woman who worked on LIF for a while, and she just thought she was the greatest thing.
Little
ever.
stumpy one?
She thought she was the bee's knees, the hottest thing you'd ever seen in your life.
She was as tall as a bee's knees.
No, but in her mind,
She looked like a paperweight.
but in her mind,
I mean, she
was,
did, man. She looked like
Oh, my
a bookend,
God.
like something
Yeah.
you put so other things don't fall over.
Yeah, so there's some interesting.
She
characters.
took over for Atlas holding up planet Earth when he took a smoke break.
And to give you an idea, before we play this segment, how radio works, we've been doing this for a long time, over 15 years, you know. So when we started out, we're doing guy radio. It was very sectioned off, like like cable TV. Lifetime we know is for ladies. ESPN we know is for sports. Comedy Central is about comedy.
Right. Real specific.
We were in that guy.
Down to the golf channel.
were in that-
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
right.
I know you
Love
like
it,
golf.
love it.
How do you have a 24? Whatever.
I watch it constantly. David Faraday's one of my favorites. Anyway, so we so at that point in time, like we had strippers in, and we're on after Howard Stern, or it's just a different style of radio, and in like most things.
By the way, it's a quick side note. When you come on after Howard Stern, you can do a lot more stuff because it's never going to be as controversial
Yeah.
as what was just on.
So, but like anything in life, like even with Howard Stern, you evolve. He doesn't do the lesbian dating game anymore. He doesn't do all these things. He does not bring strippers in. For the most part, if he could, he'd be sitting down talking to Barack Obama, or he would be talking about someone that he's interested in talking to. And not that he doesn't do some of that little stuff, but he has evolved as well, and so have we. So, in not a lot, but there's a lot of things that we don't do anymore.
I think he's evolved more.
We don't bring strippers in the studio. We've never done that since we've been in Seattle because there's really no strip clubs. Bobby Wagner will tell you there's no place to go. You don't have to worry about any Seahawk getting the coronavirus because there's no clubs. But either way, it's just so. And I think that lends it to this. And Steve, I know that I stopped saying the N-bomb on the air in about 2017 because I just thought it was a fine time. But like, I don't want to say you were quoting at the time the woman at the Burger King, and you basically just gave the quote of the woman at the counter. So this is what Donovan heard was not Steve dropping the N-bomb in the context of conversation. It was a quote from someone else who said it to him.
And I'm one of these people, and it's a weird position to be in, but I believe this strongly. Like, look, it can be the N-bomb, it can be the C word, whatever it might be, the words that you obviously cannot say or should not say. When it is a quote, and I believe this should be true for the news, you know, because on the news, it's always stupid when they say, well, you know, so-and-so got in trouble at 7-Eleven for using an ethnic slur. Like, you need to say the slur, because then it carries more weight. You know what I mean? And you're quoting
It's like yesterday.
You can't go on the news and be like, what's up, my ends?
Right.
But certainly, if you're saying, this is what happened, this is the statement that was made, I feel you should be able to say it within the context of news. And essentially, I'm recalling a story. This was not a news thing, but this was the quote that a woman, and it was
Said to
another
you.
black woman, said to me. And the truth of it is, not that that particular word made it funny, but you kind of understand where I was, probably what this person looked like who's talking to me, and it just kind of makes the whole quote.
When we moved out here, fast food traditionally is young people. You know what I mean? On the East Coast. So there's a lot of young people who work there. And when you're in Baltimore, most of the young people in the city are black. If you go on the outskirts of it, there's white pockets too, but it's typically a young person. So like anything else, you know, those jobs are what those jobs are. But when we came out to the West Coast, it was a bunch of white people working in fast food, and a lot of them were middle-aged and older. So it was just a different thing. And so when we walked into a McDonald's, like, hi, how are you? Welcome to McDonald's. It's good to see you.
I remember her quote.
And
Now,
that,
keep in mind,
and that was why we brought up the conversation. We were bringing up the differences in how that we
Baltimore has Baltimore, and I mean, and look, I love my city of Baltimore, but I also recognize what is wrong with my city of Baltimore. So understand, if you go to Baltimore and you've never been there before, or if you've never been east of the Mississippi, it would be the equivalent of walking into a prison. The way they speak to you, the way they greet you, and like, look, if you're sensitive, don't go because they don't care. All right. So when you went to a fast food place, people spoke to you as though they knew you. but it didn't mean they were friendly. Imagine that you knew everyone that worked at a fast food place and none of them liked you. It's not that they don't like you, but if you were like stuck talking to someone that you know,
Right.
but they don't, that's kind of the truth. So we get to Seattle and we walked into a McDonald's and this was her quote. Good morning, welcome to McDonald's, how can I help?
Like the commercial.
And Miles and I looked at each other like, are they filming? And I'm not kidding. We never, I know how stupid this sounds, not once in my life on the East Coast did anyone ever say anything remotely like that. But,
Yeah.
hold on, bitch, I'll get to you. Like, that's how it was there.
And
it
bitch, stand back.
yeah. I didn't ask for your order yet, mother. Right? And it's no big deal. That's just how it is.
Or you get up there and they'll be like, it's my break time.
Yeah, straight up.
And you're
man.
like, what, I have to get to the other line in the register? Like,
Yeah, or you can wait here
Aw,
for
man.
me to be done with my break. Like that is how.
So I think that's what.
That's the food
Right.
buying experience.
So this guy Donovan, he hears this conversation and he hears the N-word over the air, which we don't do anymore. Back to the context of it. There was a story I want to tell you real quick yesterday in California about a woman who was speaking disparagingly about a Chinese worker at a convenience store, and she kept hurling racial slurs. All right, they don't put what the racial slur is in the story. So of course I'm like, well, I think I know what it is.
But that's the problem.
You know what I mean? But the
But
quote
wait,
from
wait.
her, you know, it should be in the story.
Well, wait. All right. I feel like with black people, we can pretty much guess. If you say a racial slur,
that's it.
like, is
In
that
the-
what you think it is?
That's in the armor, absolutely.
Okay.
That's the only thing I'm guessing.
That's one thing I can guess, but I've heard other things where I feel
yeah,
like,
I guess.
look, put it this way, as far as the racial slur thing goes, I feel like one of the advantages of being black, there's pretty much just the one. Like, there's a million different things you say, but the one that ever gets
The one that stings.
Like, we know what it was, but when you say other, like if they said, you know, they were from India or they're Chinese, I'm like, all right, well, I think I know, but you don't want to ask because if you hazard a guess, and they're like, no, that's not at all. It's like that Progressive commercial with Bigfoot. And she says something Bigfoot, and he's like, what did you call me? My name is Daryl.
So think about it. Here's a scenario. You got a black guy driving down the road in his car. He's listening to our radio show, and he hears the N-word. All right.
Oh, I love retarded.
This does not please him, and probably for the first time in his life, he picks up the phone and he calls a radio station.
Sure.
I mean, I was 14 last time I called a radio station. So let's go back in time. And this is the phone call that we got after that went over the air, and the call we got from a gentleman named Donovan.
Hello, Donovan. Welcome to the men's room.
How you doing?
Hola.
Hola. Hey, I just wanted to say, man, look, I can understand that you have a game called, Ghettopoly, and you have the other game called Redneckopoly and all that stuff. I get it. But being an African American, hearing you say niggeropoly is kind of on the fence. You know what I mean? I listen to you guys' show all the time, but it gets a little much when you start throwing the N-word around. You know what I mean?
I hear you, but I will say this. It is absolutely on the fence, but there's two ways you can look at this, and I've taken my own path on this, and true, it's for anyone. The one side says, look, if everyone just stops saying it, the word goes away. And in my experience, that is not even remotely close to being true. So I feel like I'm going to step in reality with that. That's my position on it. You can disagree, but the word hasn't gone away. I can promise you. So the other side of that is take it head on, and what happens is you get to do exactly what you're doing, which is you have a discussion about it head on, instead of just complaining about what you don't like to hear, which all of us can do, and it's human nature, and you're absolutely right. But the flip side is, when things come up, if you can talk about it in a form like this, not all that political crap, not the soapbox, not the podium, it's not for TV to advertise my hair relaxer and all the rest of this garbage and BS that we're fed all the time, we will sit here and we can have an open and honest conversation. So I get what you're saying. I'm probably not going to stop to understand. That's not... But understand, that's not to offend you. I'm just saying the point is, at least someone like you calls and says their piece. But I will not sit here and go on the soapbox about it. I can see you can bug people, but the point is, the word does exist. So if it's going to exist, well, I'm going to take it and I'm going to make it my own. I'm not going to run away from stuff. I'm not going to bury my face, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't happen. That's for guys that are on the soapbox that are lying to you. But that's not the position we're in. That's not something we enjoy people doing to us. So instead of insulting people's intelligence and tiptoeing around the word, because to me, there's no difference between saying N-bomb and saying nigger. If you said N-bomb, well, the implication's already there. That's almost more insulting. So I'd rather just say
That's
it
what I
directly.
say.
Me too. I go with N-bomb too.
I go with
guys.
N-bomb. I don't. You tell me how to say it, I'll say it.
If anyone else is listening, I'm an N-bomb guy.
I'm going to speak from the white contingency on this show and say N-bomb is safe by me.
Yeah, it's just not me, man. I just don't bury my head in the sand. It's not good and nothing gets done. You know?
You're not even letting me talk. You're not even letting me say anything.
Oh, go ahead.
It's like this. You shouldn't say stuff that you wouldn't say in somebody's face. You know what I'm saying?
I would say that in anyone's
That's
face.
true, because I bet you 5,000,000 to 1, you wouldn't go up when the Seahawks are around and start dropping the N-word without getting, put in your place. So,
Why would I drop the N-bomb as a black guy anyway? I'm a black dude. Why would I say it?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So if you ain't going to say it in somebody's face, you don't even need to say it at all.
Well, Donovan, listen. I would say it to anyone. So I'm not a guy that backs down from saying stuff.
Yeah, I bet you would. I
oh.
bet you would. And I bet you've never said that in a group of blacks. Ever. Ever.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, I'm not. And I bet you if you did, you'd get put in your place, little homie.
Why would I get put in my place for what?
You know what?
I don't know what.
Saying that word, yeah, hey, all right?
Donovan.
Test that theory out sometime.
Donovan.
Test it out.
Donovan.
At least.
Donovan, hang on. Do you know that I'm a black dude? So when I do hang out with my black friends, it gets dropped a lot. So I've said it a lot in front of black people. My family will say it around each other. My little piece of S cousin, trust me, that's his goddamn nickname every other month.
You're black.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Are you
Donovan,
kidding me, Donovan?
Jesus.
Yeah, I'm a black guy. So when I choose to
You know
drop the word
what?
nigger, that's
Welcome.
quite all right.
I'm giving you this.
I'll tell you what, Donovan, check out the website, all right? Just go to KISW.com.
Wow.
So here's my other problem. When people pass judgment because of my voice, because there's some assumption that a black guy's not supposed to sound bright, that's another problem too.
No one's saying
you
you sound bright, though.
You see what I'm saying, man?
No one's saying you sound bright.
You know, that is a fine point. I just sound white, not smart.
You've been listening to the greatest story never told with Miles and Thrill on radio.com.
Oh, man! A Double Flush production.
A message from Target Zero. This evening, most people in Washington didn't drive after drinking. They did happy hour virtually. They chose a designated driver. They made sure their friends stayed safe too. And thanks to those good decisions, our roads stayed safe. 78% of us in Washington never drink before we drive. And that's a choice that's easy to live with. Support for this podcast comes from the state of Washington. There's a new way to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Your phone. WA Notify will let you know if you were near someone who later tests positive for COVID-19, like that person you were in line with last Thursday. It's completely anonymous. It doesn't know who you are or where you go. Help stop the spread. Wear a mask, physically distance, keep groups small, and add WA Notify on your phone. For more info, go to wanotify.org. A message from the state of Washington.
Now, the greatest story never told with Miles and Thrill.
Oh, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the show. The greatest story never told. 42 episodes deep. What an accomplishment. We'll start with a couple emails here. Guys, Ola Bacholas, your last program, based on the Depends thing, made me remember an episode where a reporter radio person complained about the name of the men's room sausage being available on the Washington State ferry systems. That sparked an entire show of the men's room, mostly Thrill, yelling about how much of a piece of crap this guy is, how he doesn't support the Fisher House, how he's un-American. You threw out all the stats, all the good the men's room does in donations to the Fisher House, on and on and on. For the full 4-hour show, I think the person that was talking crap about the men's room sausage, he ended up catching wind that you guys were throwing him under the bus.
You think?
And tried calling into the men's room, which you guys declined to take the call, and continued to grill him on the air. That's one of the funniest things I've ever heard, and that was the day the name Boat Meat was born.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever tried to call on the show.
I don't know if he did or not. I didn't care.
Yeah,
it's like F you.
No, it was just
You
one
worry
of those
about your
things.
goddamn show.
Exactly. I've looked for all the podcasts high and low and could not find it online. All I could find was a Twitter post below from 2016 when it all went down. If allowed, can you guys do an episode talking about the moment with clips from the show? I don't think we have, to be honest with you, B-Dub. I remember it vaguely. I don't think the guy was familiar with the show. He just maybe heard it was men's room sausage.
Well, that's what ended up coming back to this. He didn't realize it was named after our show or that the proceeds went to the Fisher House. He just made the statement. Fair enough. Like, that sounds like crap, but I guess someone had called his show saying that the ferries shouldn't even carry it because of the name, blah, blah,
Right.
blah.
And now we have a big sign up there with a Fisher House and everything else. So that was well worth the time
response
and effort.
to that.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have another email here. This comes from Brandon. It says, "Hola, gentlemen.
Hola.
I was wondering if you were ever going to get Ted on the podcast. I'm sure he has plenty of stories. A lot of us would love to hear. Me personally, I'd like to know why he was arrested right before you guys moved to Seattle. Thanks for everything you do." That from Brandon. We were going to get Ted on the podcast.
Well, Ted has a podcast where, I mean, if you want to hear Ted's story specifically, isn't that right, Ted?
That is right.
That's so strange.
And
I mean,
ironically, it's called The Podcast,
It
and
is.
we call it the greatest podcast in all the land.
And it's almost 300 episodes that you could go back and listen to and learn just about everything, right?
It is. It is.
But he wanted to hear it here.
Yeah.
I'm just like, why don't you listen to his where
Right.
Ted's sharing a story?
And then, of course, there's the Megacast. I mean,
There's the Megacast with me and Steve Miggs.
Right.
Also personal, behind-the-scenes stories. I just don't have the publicity that this one does.
Right, exactly, sure. It doesn't get talked about as much.
No, I put it in front of the daily podcast every day, Miles.
Right, and we do a daily podcast here as well.
Right.
So much stuff.
But it has to be here, Ted.
Right,
All
yeah.
these other ways for people to hear, but it must be done here.
I was on here once telling a story.
Yeah.
So suck on it, Brandon.
Do you remember why you got arrested?
For sure.
Okay.
Most people remember why they got arrested.
Right, I know.
I got arrested for suspicion of DUI, suspicion of failure to stop, suspicion of fleeing. You see,
Why were they so suspicious about these things?
Because none of that was ever. There's zero convictions and probation before judgment. So basically, the court said we don't know what happened.
Oh, that's awesome.
And certainly you didn't know what happened.
Right.
Like, I'd love to tell you guys, I just
But
don't know.
It was just the timing of it that sucked, as far as when it happened. And then wasn't it like a holiday Monday? Or why in the heck were you in there for so long?
It was it was Cinco de Mayo. I'll never
Was it
forget.
Cinco de Mayo?
Okay.
Cinco de Mayo was on a Sunday, right? So I got put into Baltimore Central booking on a Sunday evening and got out Tuesday.
So when people ask you, is Baltimore like The Wire? I would say after Central Booking, you'd probably say, yeah.
All right, so please listen to the podcast, but I'll give them a quick couple things. So number one is you're asleep on cement, and you wake up to a dude kicking you, going, "Move, fat boy." And there's a brown bag next to you that has 2 hard-boiled eggs.
Okay.
And then, like, you just move from cell to cell, and basically the cop, I was driving, I don't want to say too much. The cop's always going to play that game where you could, say one thing or say the other, right? I, of course, said, "Well, I'm taking the 5th, blah, blah, blah." So they were not too happy. So it was what I would see, a concerted effort to get me lost in the system to teach me a lesson.
Oh, of course.
Oh, is that what it was, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that's what I was going to say. Why it wasn't just an overnight?
Right. And then when I got finally to see the commissioner, and everybody in the cell is like, "White boy, you'll be fine, man. Like, you never been arrested." Like, no. Like, at this point, I never had a point on my license. And then basically the commissioner was just like, 6 G's. Boom. I was like, $6,000 bail. Like, that's a lot. Like, I didn't even make a phone call up to this point. Because now you're getting booked into the tier. Like, you're going upstairs is where the jail is, the tiers. You got to put on the jumpsuit and this and that. So then you go see your public defender.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, "Why is it that high?" And she just goes, "Honey, you're the wrong color in the wrong jail."
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
But
no.
to her credit, she gave me a number of a guy, bail bondsman, that let me bail out for 5% instead of 10.
Oh, nice.
That is great.
$300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
we, the only thing I remember was getting into work on Monday, and Steve and I look at each other like, "Ted's still here."
Well, it was weird,
You're
right?
like- you're like,
Because the
he's-
bosses are at where's Ted? So we just said, "Oh, dude, he called us earlier." We hadn't talked to Ted. We didn't know what's going on. We're like, "Oh, dude, he called us earlier. Either he's going to be late or he's not going to come in. We'll see how he feels." But that way, so they didn't ask a lot of questions. They're like, "Okay, next time let us know." We're like, "Sure, man." But we have this mutual buddy named Jake the Rapper. And Jake, he would wander into the studio every so often. So he came in this day, and we would chat with him on the air, just doing our thing. And then we go to break. He's like, "Where's Ted?" I said, "Bro, we don't know. Can you?" And Ted looked real close to where the studios were. Like, can you fly over to his apartment, man, and just see like if he's just dead asleep, whatever the deal is.
Right. And my roommate, right, everybody I live with, they know Jake.
Oh yeah. So Jake, he disappears from us for a while, and then I don't know, an hour later he shows back up. He's like, "Yo, man, I don't know where Ted is. I think maybe he's been arrested." And I did not think so. I'm like, man, I don't think he's been arrested. I think he got effed up last night. You know what I mean? Probably just fell asleep at a buddy's house. I get it. We've all been there. And no, Ted got arrested. And so when we find this out, we're definitely keeping this hush-hush from the boss. Because for whatever reason, they never asked about Ted one way or another, right? They didn't care about you. They didn't like you. And for whatever reason, on this day, Ted kept coming up. So, did you guys hear from Ted? Yeah, he does not feel good. He definitely would not be here today. Well, is he coming in tomorrow? You know, we don't know.
We don't know.
We're just going to play
Right,
this
and
by ear.
This was on the heels of having been in Ocean City, Maryland for the great, because this was a Sunday night. So Friday and Saturday, I was down at the beach DJing a damn high school prom with your buddy Chip.
Yeah.
And then Sunday you come
Chip.
back.
Sunday I come back and we're gonna cut loose and this and that. So he goes, should we go to the strip club? We should go to the strip club.
Right.
Yeah.
You
That was
should
the
not have
beginning
gone to
of
the
the
strip club.
Oh, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, first of all, I shouldn't have been driving. Second of all, it is pouring rain. I'm right behind a college. Just basically, like, at this point, we're like, let's just go home. Take a corner. Allegedly, he may have sideswiped a car.
Right.
Park, park it down the street. The 2.5 rolls up. My buddy, of course, has a full, he's just giving this to, like, the campus cop, 2.5, just giving him a bunch of crap. So within seconds, the Baltimore City police are there.
Jesus.
And then right. So I mean, just imagine pouring thunderstorm rain, and he's a mess. He's just like laying, and then you go home tonight. You say, and I'm just like, no.
Great.
Now you have to go to jail.
Yeah.
Yep, there
Great
you go,
time.
Brandon.
There you go, Brandon.
That's what happened. That's what you asked for. That's what you get. And there's episode number 42 of The Greatest Story Never Told.
Oh, is that it?
That's it. That's all you got to do.
Damn, I spent 45 minutes on
I know. How
Zoom.
long did this go?
Megacast was only 20 minutes this week.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually do like 45.
How long we go on that one, Mike?
This guy is about 8.5.
That's all you need to hear.
Oh,
That's fine.
sons of bitches.
Yeah,
They wanted to hear your story.
It's a story. The end.
You've been listening to The Greatest Story Never Told with Miles and Thrill on radio.com.
Oh, man!
Police reported ahead.
A Double Flush production.
A message from Target Zero. This evening, most people in Washington didn't drive after drinking. They did happy hour virtually. They chose a designated driver. They made sure their friends stayed safe too. And thanks to those good decisions, our roads stayed safe. 78% of us in Washington never drink before we drive. And that's a choice that's easy to live with. Support for this podcast comes from the state of Washington. There's a new way to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Your phone. WaNotify will let you know if you were near someone who later tests positive for COVID-19, like that person you were in line with last Thursday. It's completely anonymous. It doesn't know who you are or where you go. Help stop the spread. Wear a mask, physically distance, keep groups small, and add WaNotify on your phone. For more info, go to WaNotify.org. A message from the state of Washington.
Now, The Greatest Story Never Told with Miles and Thrill.
Oh, the crowd goes wild. We do this in front of our live audience. The hell with COVID. We go live. Live audiences all the time. Episode number 43. Crowd loves it.
It's weird that audience gets a little smaller every week.
Oh my God, it's Ryan Castle.
They're dying off.
Yeah. Ryan Castle, welcome to the Greatest Story Never Told podcast. A much bigger podcast than the one you do. That is a fact.
That is true. And, you
It's
know,
true.
people should know, Miles and I had a fight with Castle and our other boss, Hair Club, for 3 years for them to let us do this.
That's a true story.
Yeah.
Yeah, we said, please, man, let us do this podcast. And you guys were like,
Everything
no.
everything on this podcast is absolutely true so far.
For 3 years.
Who would want to listen
3
to that?
years, so thank you.
There's a live audience. Your guys' podcast is better than mine, which doesn't exist. You
not
guys
those-
wanted to do this and weren't forced to do it. I mean, all of that is
I
true.
think we're the fifth biggest podcast right now in the building, which is another big deal. Exactly. All those
I'll have you
things.
know that this is the third largest podcast in the building, behind your other podcast, and then of course BJ and Mig's daily podcast.
Oh, okay, all right.
BJ Fat.
We're not doing
That
too
ain't
bad at
bad.
all. No, it's not. Not bad at all.
Considering those other two are astronomically huge.
And I know what you're thinking. If you're at home and you've been following along on the podcast, last week we had Lee Ted Smith on. This week we have Ryan Castle on. I mean, the guests just keep on coming. This is unbelievable.
Episode 43. I see where I stand.
Our producer is. It's like, what can we do now? Oh, look, all right.
Well, we're doing our top 100 countdown, so feel good.
Yeah, exactly. So we.
Uncle,
so Ryan,
better than average.
We would like to go back in time, as we do oftentimes on this podcast. And I want to say, was it like 10 years ago, or was it?
It may have been around that long. The idea was this. Ryan Castle came to us and said, guys, there's this really cool thing going on, which that's always a 50-50 toss-up. But in this case, we agreed, and I guess
It's cool to me.
Ozzy Osbourne, guitar player extraordinaire Zach Wilde, he's doing his Black Label Society thing. But the idea was he's going to do a national radio tour. So the idea, he's going to show up at different rock stations in each market.
Yeah.
He's going to sit in for the whole show. And he's just going to do the show with you. He's going to play some songs.
Here,
yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit more about that. So it wasn't just radio. He was doing the point of him coming to town was to do an autograph session at El Corazon down the street.
Yeah.
And the radio portion was just to promote that. And rather than just popping in for an interview, I said, hey, here's a fun idea. Zach's an entertaining guy. Why don't we just have him on the show that day as a member of the show?
Yeah,
And
well,
they all agreed to that.
Yeah, and it was, we thought,
Rather than
this
just
is
doing
awesome.
an interview.
Right. And it was a little surreal at the time. I can't remember exactly what was going on in our actual main KISW studio. Were we doing like a...
It was during the remodel.
Okay, we were doing
Yeah.
a remodel in there. So we weren't in our actual studio. We were in the one beside it, which is kind of a makeshift deal, but we've been broadcasting in there. So it was a little bit tighter quarters.
But like anything,
Smaller room, yeah.
It's just like sleeping on the opposite side of your own bed. You know, nothing really changes. It's just everything isn't quite as comfortable, but
It's like it's like having to sleep in the guest bedroom.
Sure. Now, what we don't know
which
is...
I think we have all done.
Which all of us have done probably on more than one occasion.
So the record rep comes up and brings Zach Wilde in, and we understand we're going to do the entire show with Zach Wilde.
Yeah.
This is a big deal.
This is my pal Mark. I've known Mark for 20 years.
And we should also add, but in the studio with us, in addition to Zach himself, were two of his handlers.
Two handlers.
Just keep the two handlers in mind
Right.
as they come
This is
into the
important.
store.
So this day starts long before we ever get to the studio. So the show's supposed to start at 1 o'clock. I have him scheduled to get there, or I'm sorry, show's supposed to start at 2 o'clock. I have him scheduled to get there at 1:30, just so we can sit down and kind of, here's how it works.
Right.
You know what I mean? Here are expectations, whatever. So dude shows, I get the phone call at like 1:55, 5 minutes before the show is supposed to start. Dude rolls up in a taxi. And I'm down there with Mark, and he pours out of the taxi.
He does. And he's got
And this is
he's got a giant gym bag that you would take like if you were playing hockey for your hockey pads and you were a goalie.
Right.
This is a huge ass gym bag full of Longhammer IPAs from Red Hook Brewing
Yes.
Company.
And he's yelling and he's loud, and Zach's sober now. This was before Zach got sober.
Very
And
much
this
before.
this day may have been one of the reasons why Zach decided to sober up, because it started by him laying down in the elevator with his feet hanging out the door in the lobby downstairs with a gym bag full of beers, and I had to pick up his boots and hold them up over my head so the elevator doors would close. All the while he's yelling, laying on the floor, "I'm a guitar guy!" That's how the day with Zach starts.
That's
That
how
was
it
the
starts.
start of the day.
And by the way, if you ever have seen Zach Wilde, those are the same clothes he's wearing right now. So he has one outfit.
And by the way, this was all in fun. He wasn't trying to be a jerk.
No.
He was just messing around.
He's just Zach Wilde. So
And we were
he's that.
excited to meet him, but I would say when he walked into the studio, it's very impressive because, you know, we're rock fans, and this guy at this point had been playing with Ozzy for 20, 25 years. I mean, this dude, you know, and he's a bigger guy.
he is a big guy. That's
He
one thing you
has,
have to know. He's a big guy.
He has an odd smell, an
It's-
odd aroma. It's not exactly bad. It's certainly not good, but your body, physiologically, your brain is constantly warning you.
It's like leather-
You might not want to hug this guy.
Motor oil, feta cheese,
In someone else's armpits.
right? I mean, it's
Lack of general personal hygiene.
and you also have to remember this. Whenever you think of Zach Wilde, he is one of the nicest guys
True.
in the world.
Yeah.
So whether he's sober, whether he's drunk, he is huggy. He is brother. You are
It's a
under
good
his,
dude.
You're under his arm, and you realize that when he leaves, you've got his pit imprint on your shoulder.
There was
from the sweat.
moisture. Right. He puts
Yeah.
his arm around you, and you don't want to say anything but I can smell his armpit on my shoulder. And I'm not kidding.
But again, we're in a small room, and we're going to do 4 hours.
Yeah. But, and not to get off subject, but it wasn't long after that Zach came through playing with Ozzy, and Ted Smith and I were standing backstage at Key Arena, and Zach is like 10 feet away, and he looks at me and Ted, and he's got sunglasses on, and he goes, "I wear my sunglasses at night so I can see. And I go, Zach, did you just quote effing Corey Hart to me? And he goes, "Oh!" And he like comes running at me and like picks me up and gives me this big bear hug and then puts me down and walks away again. And I just looked at Ted and I went, "Why am I wet?"
Yeah, exactly. And that was also the show where he fell backwards and his guitar tech had to come
kept playing,
and
yeah.
pick him up.
Yeah.
Off
That's
his
Zach.
back on
He's
stage.
nuts.
He is. And I want to say too that he was going to do 4 or 5 of these autograph type plays. I don't know if he's going to go to every radio station in every town, but they cut that tour short.
Yeah, we were the
There
end of the idea.
Maybe there was 6 of those planned.
But this was not. This is one of the rare occasions where things went sideways, but it wasn't our fault.
Right.
So,
No.
but Zach comes in, and one of the things you need to understand, Zach does not care that the FCC has rules. So you hit this dump button like every 30, and he's not being mean. It's just how he talks. And again, as Zach is going on, I just want you to remember, very quietly, very studiously, and very courteously, his 2 handlers just stand in the back of the studio.
They do.
They don't make any noise. They're not getting involved.
Just making sure he's okay.
Right. So
Yeah, these guys got in the elevator with us when I was holding his feet up so the doors would close.
So they could handle.
They were part of Zach's entourage.
and they were very well behaved. So we're doing this
It's
thing.
very, very quiet, very cordial.
Very, very cordial. But one of the things about Zach, as you're doing an interview, and with Zach, you don't really do an interview. You ask one question, and then he fills in the next 4 hours. I mean, he's got no problem. But he is constantly cracking beer. And while we all drink beer, one, we're at work, so we can't drink at the pace that he's drinking. And he's already 3 sheets.
Sure.
But he cracks open your beer with his ring on his finger.
A skull ring.
He would just pull it out, cracks it open, then he would kiss the top
Of your beer before
now,
he gave it to you.
These are pre-COVID days, but he's still not really the guy.
There you go, brother. Love you.
Like, ah, God, it's already wet.
It almost sounded like you were talking to Macho Man too. He was, but you go from over the course of these, let's say the first 2 hours, Zach is engaged as far as any questions we have about Ozzy, about Black Label Society.
I don't talk about anything.
Anything
Right.
about it.
He's
Growing up
talking
in
about
New Jersey.
talking about the mayor, talking about the boss, talking about
Yes.
The boss is
Sharon-
his wife.
Sharon is Sharon
the
might be-
mayor, I believe, was Sharon, and he
Yeah.
pointed out, we said, look, you're not playing with Ozzy. And he said it's Sharon's call. And before we could say anything negative about Sharon Osbourne, he said, look, you need to understand, she likes me. She loves her husband. The problem is, we are toxic twins. If we get together, we bring out the word as far as drugs and booze go. And so Sharon basically approached him and said, like, Zach, you can't be with my husband because you're going to get him killed.
Right,
or he's
right.
going
it's
to
like
get
you have a friend that's like that too, I'm sure, and each
think we
of
all
your
do.
parents think the other is a bad influence.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we see that so Zach's great. He's happy. He's having a good time. He's telling all the stories, and then as this progresses, this begins the I'm drunk, I'm really emotional meltdown as far as the way a lot of people get when they've crossed the line. And now he's talking about his dad. He's talking about his family, how much he loves his wife, how much he loves everything.
His bambinos.
The hands on the ground.
kids, yeah.
birds. I mean, I love it. And he starts bawling. You know what I mean? Like he starts.
This is Zach Wilde.
He starts to cry because
He's blubbering.
He's so emotional. Like it's from the heart. He means it. He's not upset that something bad happened. He's just really pouring it all out there. As
But
far
he's
as his
hammered.
feelings.
So
Right.
you can't console a drunk person who's now in the world of sad. I mean, it's like being a drifted sea of misery.
I don't know how the hell this happened. I don't know where we got this. They might have brought it in. I don't remember. But either way, at some point in time, and he has not played guitar on the show or anything like that. We're just doing an interview. He determined.
Yeah, I don't even know that playing was part of the original
No.
plan.
No, it was not, but he demanded because he had a new song or something like
Right.
this that was written on piano.
Right. We had a piano. We had a keyboard in a studio right behind that. So about 3 hours into this, he has 3 sheets to the wind. He's going to go down there. And I think
We're all a little drunk at this point, to be fair.
And I think
Because he kept feeding us kissed beer.
I think he
Yeah,
kind of
it was tough for all of us to say no, I'm sure.
I think he kind of forgot that he was in the radio station when he sits down at this piano.
I don't think he
I went
cares.
around and looked in at him, and I swear to God, you'd think it was just Greg Allman sitting there playing. He can play.
He played his ass off.
He can play, but now it's getting emotional. I mean, this piano is really now.
And there are tears streaming
down his face. I mean, he's crying, and whatever the song is, and we're just like, oh my God, this is live on the air. Like we're like, Zach, you're on. Zach, you're on. It takes him like 30 seconds.
We're not
to
just
start
in the studio. This is live.
Yeah, this is live on the
happening
air.
right
You got to go right now.
Yeah, none
You
of this
gotta
is
do it.
pre-recorded.
And
is
we're
the
just,
thing.
and all we could think of, and Steve and I have done many shows together that have sometimes gone off the rails. That all we could think about was, this is nothing. And since that point in time,
nothing has ever been that off the rails in this radio show.
And it wasn't-
It was so off the rails.
It
Like
was-
I don't even know that any of us could figure out how to recover it at that point. Like, do you interrupt him? Do you stop him?
Because we didn't
do
know
you
if we-
just say thank you?
Yeah, we didn't know if he was going to sing on this thing. He's just playing. I mean, now we're like 7 minutes deep into an Elton John like solo.
But like
You know,
he's
with no
playing and
vocals,
crying
so-
like a weird Broadway
Right.
thing. You know what I mean? Like,
And then he stops. He just stops. And I don't know if it was Mark or you, Ryan, or somebody said, "Look, it's over. Let's just wrap this
Oh
up."
wait, you left out the best part.
What's that?
Because he messed up the song a few times, and then finally he goes, "What do you want to play this f***ing song?" And he goes, "Kong, kong, 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 kong."
Oh yeah. Right. And that was when we realized
this is live.
That was when we realized.
You may have to edit that.
Yeah. But keep in mind, I'm serious. We're getting off the air at 6. His signage in meet greet was like 6:37. I mean, it
And
wasn't.
it's like 5:30 at this point. I mean, it's late. It's late in the show.
No, the thing was, and understand where our old studio was. It is less than a 5-minute walk to El Corazon. So the idea is, we finish the show, and then we're going to walk over with Zach to El Corazon. He should be
Yeah,
there
guys, it's a block and a half.
by
I mean, it's close.
6:30 at the latest.
So,
but people are guessing around 6:15. But there is this problem that Castle's explaining to us. He says, "Look, I need you guys to go to El Corazon and stall." We're like, "Stall for what?" He'd say, "Because this son of a bitch has passed out and is dead asleep in the hallway
In the kitchen.
with his feet in
He
the
was in
kitchen."
the kitchen. He was
I
in
mean,
the
you
kitchen.
had to step over
He was
him.
on the table in the kitchen.
Right. Completely
With the door
gone.
closed.
And you couldn't get it. Like, I don't know if he locked it or
But
whatever.
keep in mind, our show was done. He's supposed to be going to El Corazon.
Okay.
So Castle's agreed that he will be part of the team to try to wake him up.
Uh-huh.
So, oh no! I was absolutely not going to be the guy that woke him up. So he's in the kitchen. It's 6 o'clock. We're supposed to be over at the thing, and Mark, who we mentioned earlier, he goes, "So Ryan, how bad would it be if we didn't make it over to the signing? Well, there's 700 people standing out in front of El Corazon waiting for Zach to show up. It would be bad.
And
it
we've
would
been
be really
telling them all day,
They've
hey,
been
as soon
listening
as
to
we're
this
done.
in anticipation.
And so Mark looks at me and he goes, "Okay, go in there and wake him up. You go in there and wake him up. I'm not going in there. There's no way in hell I'm poking that bear while he sleeps."
Right. Exactly.
Well,
Okay.
keep in mind now,
That's your job.
Now the
That's
show-
why you're here.
But
That's
keep in
what
mind,
you do.
we
That
are
was
now-
your career choice, not mine. I make funny on the radio. You wake up Zach Wild.
we're now looking at the two handlers.
And we're like, what- because
can
the
you
show's
can you guys help us out? Now, this is before we've left the studio, going to go to Elko, but like, look, we have hit a moment where we understand what's going on. Guys, can you help get them up? And this is when we found the two handlers. They're not handlers.
No.
They're two fans of Zach
We're
Wild.
standing outside waiting for Zach Wild to come in, and he's like, "Come on in, brothers."
So
But they
these-
got their BLS stuff on, and everything, like, they got their Aussie shirts
And they were
on
real
shit.
apologetic. I mean, they're saying, like, guys, we're sorry. And I looked at them, I said, dude, that's the most
That's brilliant.
well-played. Because
Yeah.
you guys were
Just
cool.
stood there
You
like
were
bodyguards.
quiet. But they see that they're the only two people that saw this whole goddamn thing go
And now,
down.
yeah.
And they have nothing to do with
Nothing.
this.
And now they're willing to help.
The drama and chaos when Zach showed up and they got on the elevator. No one thought to ask any questions,
They
and
stood
they just
in the
wrote it all
studio
day.
for 4 hours.
They
Like
did
I
say
said,
a word.
they didn't do anything.
They weren't even with us. Okay, so somehow I think
Just a couple of dudes, and they stood in the back of the room and played it cool all day.
it was awesome. It was absolutely.
I love
awesome.
those guys.
I do too. So I think Steve and I and Ted, maybe we took off and we went down to El Corazon.
We did. Because we kept lying.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember I kept texting Castle, like, what the is going on? And he's like, look, man, we're trying to get this dude up.
Yeah.
So we kept
We're-
lying, like, hey,
we're
Zach's
gonna
running
do-
a little late, but we couldn't say, hey, he's dead asleep at the studio. So we're saying, like, well,
But
he's
We're,
doing a
just-
few
we're on
things.
rock and roll time. We're just on rock and roll
But
time.
as soon as we say this, they all appear. Castle shows up. Zach shows up. Mark shows up. The two handlers show up.
Yeah.
The two guys standing in the back.
These dudes had the
He's
greatest
there.
day of their life.
And
Yeah,
like-
and so
like-
the point of this whole thing was for him to do an autograph signing, and so it's not like people are just milling about. Like, there is a line of people wrapped around the building, all ending at a table up on the elevated area in the showroom at El Corazon, where Zach is supposed to sit down and he's going to sign stuff for people. That's the whole point of the entire day.
But that
And so
didn't happen.
he finally shows up. What's that?
But that didn't
that's
happen.
not the way it went.
It actually
No.
got better.
No, he did. He sat down for about 45 seconds. I think he signed about 7 things.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the signing, there was supposed to be a local band was going to play just to keep people in the club and just for entertainment or whatever. And so Zach decides he's going to get on stage instead.
Now keep in mind, no one anticipates this. He looks at this band and goes, "Let me use one of your fucking guitars." Right?
Yeah.
And the kid's like, "Hell yeah."
Yeah, man.
Do you guys know whatever song? And dude, I'm telling you, this dude shredded for hours. He's inviting people from the audience to come up and sing.
You wouldn't even know that he had anything to drink before he got up there.
I know.
It was like a different day.
He went from asleep on the table in our kitchen to shredding with some people he pulled up out of the audience and putting on one of the best shows
ever
and one of the most memorable experiences any of these people have ever had in a matter of 24 minutes.
It was unbelievable. and seriously, like I remember, I think Jen Richards was either up there.
We didn't know
singing
she could sing. We work with her.
Jen Richards went up there. Yeah.
It was
he just kept pulling people up like, "Hey, you know how to do a whole lot of love," and then they shred into a whole lot of love. He would just crush it. He played forever. And anyone who was there, all of them were Zakk Wylde fans. They were there to get something signed by him. I don't know that he signed more than like 2 things, but what they got was several hours of Zakk on stage in a club just shredding Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath.
They got a free show in a private club with Zakk Wylde.
And that was not scheduled.
So guess what? No one said, "Oh, did he get an autograph?" They're all just standing there with their mouth open like, "This is unbelievable." And we're just sitting
You
here
want to talk
going,
about worst to first. That night went from worst to first.
It really did, man.
Ryan Castle, thank you for joining our podcast. We hope to have you back for stories about Chicago and other things later on down the road.
Man.
But, yeah, we got to just take these one at a time so people don't think we're nuts.
I still have.
Exactly. Thank you so much. There you go, episode number 43 of the Greatest Story Never Told podcast. Ryan Castle, thank you.
You've been listening to The Greatest Story Never Told with Miles and Thrill on radio.com.
Oh, man! A Double Flush production.
A message from Target Zero. A message from Target Zero. This evening, most people in Washington didn't drive after drinking. They did happy hour virtually. They chose a designated driver. They made sure their friends stayed safe too. And thanks to those good decisions, our roads stayed safe. 78% of us in Washington never drink before we drive. And that's a choice that's easy to live with. Support for this podcast comes from the state of Washington. There's a new way to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Your phone. WA Notify will let you know if you were near someone who later tests positive for COVID-19, like that person you were in line with last Thursday. It's completely anonymous. It doesn't know who you are or where you go. Help stop the spread. Wear a mask, physically distance, keep groups small, and add WA Notify on your phone. For more info, go to wanotify.org. A message from the state of Washington.
Now, The Greatest Story Never Told with Miles and Thrill.
Oh, we're back! Aren't you excited? Welcome to number 44 of the episode is on the Greatest Story Never Told podcast. Wow, we made it 44 episodes, and as you know, there might be a commercial that's played before the podcast. No guarantees. We don't know if this thing is sponsored or not.
No idea what it is. Ted, now, when we first started doing this, we had Astroglide. All right, now again, none of us have ever heard the ad, but people will start emailing going, "Hey, dude, Astroglide." And I'm like, that's great. Ted's podcast, he had Harvard Law School.
Get out of here.
How
Really?
do they make these? How do they decide who advertises where?
And who listens to Ted's podcast and goes, "You know what, Harvard Law School,
Harvard Law
that's
School.
for me."
Yeah.
I mean,
Look, I support Astroglide.
I support Ted. I just don't see how that relates to either one of them. I think it should be Astroglide for everybody. I think
Astroglide for all.
even though we can't really use it right now, it's fine.
Sure you can.
But we do ask you to, if you'd like to be an unofficial sponsor of The Greatest Story Never Told, just give a little donation to our 3 local Fisher Houses. Now, when you go to fisherhouse.org, you have the option of donating to the local chapter, and we ask you to do that and support our 3 local houses in the area. And here you go, guys. Ola, my awesome fiance, threw us a personal Red Festival over the weekend, since you guys aren't having one this year. And we donated $100 to the local Fisher Houses in honor of it. Attached is a receipt, hoping we're doing the right thing while drinking. I love you guys and look forward to hunting down the brand new Pilsner. That from Chase in Bellingham, who said, "We made this specifically to the Seattle locations, just so you know, for the Fisher House," and they donated $100.
And you guys threw your own Red Festival. That is awesome.
Why didn't you invite us?
I know. I mean,
My daughter lives in Bellingham. I could have come up.
I'd have gone up for that.
Yeah,
Sure,
I mean,
dude.
there's social distancing.
Red
and all
Festival.
that. Yeah, we didn't get to do that this year. What a bummer. Well, gentlemen, I'd love to be considered as an unofficial sponsor to The Greatest Story Never Told and have attached my donation receipt in the email. In addition, I'd like to give you guys a quick story about when I began to lose faith in humanity.
Oh, good.
A few years ago, I was working for an entertainment facility south of Seattle where we offered laser tag. These were made to look like actual firearms and thus required a tutorial before allowing people to go out and play. During one of these talks with a group, a girl who had to be in her late teens, early 20s, looked me dead in the face and asked what she should do if she forgot how to fire the blaster. Now, they say there's no such thing as a stupid question. In that moment, I disagreed. Without missing a beat, I replied, well, then maybe a coloring book is more your speed. Her dad looked at her and me and then proceeded to laugh uncontrollably while she gave me a death stare. Good times. That from DJ.
There are no stupid questions. There's just stupid people that ask questions that have an obvious answer.
DJ, thank you for that. We appreciate it. Then we get an email. This comes our way from Pat. And he wants to tell us a story about his high school football camp. Back in 2010, one of the kids on our team, Jake, suffered a knee injury and tore his ACL on day one of camp. Camp was several hundred miles away from home. Jake toughed it out and stayed at camp for the full 5 days. Well, we took a bus to and from the camp, so during the bus ride home, I and a friend of mine, Robbie, sat near Jake toward the back of the bus. This conversation took place. Jake turns around and said to us, I hope you don't need surgery. Robbie, do you think you tore your fallopian tube? Which was a common jab for us on the team when someone complained was kind of being a little bit of a wussy. Jake says, what's that? Me seizing the opportunity we've been given, a major artery in your knee. Robbie, if you tear it and don't get surgery soon enough, you could die. Jake said, oh my God, do you think I tore it? I don't know if my parents can afford surgery. Robbie says, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't worry about the surgery. Your mom probably has insurance. It's right there with the insurances, medical, dental, fallopian. At this point, Jake becomes thoroughly convinced he may have torn his fallopian tube. We proceed to prod him more, suggesting about the pain level and its correlation with torn fallopians, bruising and its indication of a bleeding fallopian. Buzz started to grow in the seats around us that Jake was convinced he tore his fallopian tube. A teammate who was an immigrant from West Africa, Abdul, also had no idea what a fallopian tube was. We explained many of the same made-up facts to Abdul, who then was also convinced that Jake had in fact torn his fallopian tube. Probably 30-40 minutes after convincing these two of this, and another teammate made his way toward the very front of the bus, sitting near the coaches, this teammate then yelled back, hey Jake, what is it that you think you tore? Jake, without hesitation, my fallopian tube. Well, everyone on the bus lost it. They were laughing, the bus driver was laughing, the defensive coordinator, who was a teacher at the school and a strong advocate against bullying, laughed so hard that he buried his face in a pillow. Abdul yelled, why is everyone laughing? Jake could die, in his thick African accent, which just made everyone laugh more. Our head coach, through laughing tears, explained to the bus, meaning Jake and Abdul, what fallopian tubes are. Jake, or as now we call him, Fallopes, did not remain on the team after this bus ride, but these spontaneous prank was well worth it. If you're out there, Fallopes, hope you're healthy and well. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed telling it. Pat, thanks for that. Yeah, let's see here. We got a lot of nice emails on last week's episode as far as Zach Wilde.
Oh, yeah.
And just so you know, Zach Wilde was a great guy. He couldn't have been a nicer human being. I mean, I don't know how much we touched on that more than just the day itself and how it went
He was
down.
just hammered.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was a great guy, but he got absolutely smashed.
And one of our most bizarre probably encounters ever in radio, along with the Sunset Thomas Day, which was that was a pretty insane day. But as far as interviews go, some interviews go better than others. I think we've touched on the fact that some guys in the industry aren't the best to interview. They're not the most fun guys.
I can deal with those guys. Some people just aren't. They're not wordy, right? We talked to Ben Shepard from Soundgarden. And he's a great guy, but he's a man of few words, and he actually takes time to consider what he's going to say, unlike us. So when he was on the show, his perspective is that we're kind of berating him because we talk a million miles an hour. He just hadn't completed thoughts, but we did not notice. But good guy, but he's not a guy that's going to give you a whole bunch of sound bites, right? And then there's people that are straight up, what's his face? Who would Weed dude? I can't think.
Aaron Lewis.
Aaron Lewis, right?
He was in Stained.
As a human being, he sucked, and we hated talking to him.
Which, we hoped his parents would have done instead of conceive him. Stained would have been better. I guess they named the band that. We got in trouble one time because Steve walked out of an interview with 3 Days Grace at Pain on the Grass. We didn't get in trouble then. We got in trouble like a week and a half later.
I did, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the guy was just being a jackass.
The guy was being an absolute jackass. And it's like, look, I got better things to do too, man, because while I'm wasting my time talking to you, and clearly you don't want to talk to us, which I don't take personally, I could go watch bands. So at some point, it's just like, F this guy. So I got up and left. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I get to work that following Monday, and my boss thought it was a big deal. So he goes, man, did you walk out of a 30 Days Grace interview? And I said, well, sort of, man. I said, the interview wasn't going anywhere, and I perceived that it was over, mostly when I said, I'm done. But I got up and left. And he said, well, you can't do that. And I said, look, to be fair, the guy's an I'm sorry you have to edit that. But that's the quote. So, hey, man, that's what he is. So about, a year later, we find out 3 Days Grace is parted ways with the singer for no real reason other than he's the asshole I said he was. But the boss actually came down and apologized for that.
Yeah.
He said, hey, man, it's been a year, but you were right. That guy sucks.
Nikki Sixx was fun to have on the air. He was a nice guy.
I don't remember talking.
Yeah, we interviewed him by phone.
I swear to God, I do not remember talking to Nikki
We talked to Vince Neil by phone, who and I will now refer to always for the rest of my life as Vince Meal.
Vince Meal.
Until he proves me differently. He was just absolutely abysmal to talk to. Nikki Sixx, we met in Vegas. When he was in 6 a.m.
He was cool there, man.
He was really good. DJ Ashba is a great guy, too. He was in that band also. One of the guitarists in the list of time where Axl was plowing through them after the original lineup of Guns N' Roses.
Met the guy from, what is it, Wolf Mother, right? Not everyone knows the band, but they're a pretty cool band. And that same place we met Nikki Sixx, we're checking out. He was on the elevators, all it was. And he has a real high-pitched voice. He has an Australian accent. They're like, hello. So I'm like, hey, man, how are you? Then, we start talking. And I go, oh, S. Right, man. You're the cat from Wolf Mother. And he's like, yeah, I am. I'm like, I like Wolf Mother. It was like, thank you. And then it was silence the rest of the elevator ride. It just got so weird and awkward.
I was peeing beside Jesse James Dupree of Jackal.
But what did he say to you?
I had a piece of pizza in my hand.
You're peeing with
in a beer. Because I didn't want to set it down anywhere.
Vegas.
Like I was on my way back to the room, but the hallway was so long. And I knew I had to pee first. And I couldn't just hold the pee, but I couldn't. You can't just set a piece of pizza and your drink down outside of a bathroom at a casino in Vegas. I don't want to sit it down on a shelf.